Hello, welcome to Let's Talk Tax. My name is TJ Sponsel, managing shareholder of McGuire Sponsel.
And I'm Meg Havener. Today we're doing a bonus episode. So TJ, can you tell us a little bit about yourself so the listeners can get to know the host?
Sure. I'm born and raised in Indianapolis, but Midwestern boy, grew up in the Catholic Mafia here in Indianapolis. Son of a CPA, much to my mother's chagrin. I, along with my sister, went to the quote-unquote family business and spent a number of years working for a local CPA firm. Mid-2000s, I had a desire to do something different, and that still was connected to the CPA industry, but maybe less away from the traditional compliance that CPA firms are so tied to. And that's when McGuire Sponsel was born. Obviously, Dave and I had very modest goals back in those days, but McGuire Sponsel is something we're extremely proud of today.
So tell me a little bit about when you and Dave started the firm, what your intention was, the process, all that.
Well, Dave and I's backgrounds are extremely different. I mean, he was raised in New Jersey. I was raised in the Midwest. He went to work for the Big Four. I went to work for a local firm. Went to school with an accounting degree. He came up through Notre Dame with an engineering degree. So very much a contrasting relationship. But one thing that we were completely committed to was building our firm to serve local and regional CPA firms. Our first conference was in May of 2005 in St. Louis. We went there just to be a resource to those firms. And we're very proud that even though we've added a lot of people and a lot of different services and now have multiple offices, that core focus has not changed.
So tell me about these CPA firms and real estate professionals. What do you hope that they will gain from tuning into your podcast?
Well, we've always led by being technical. I mean, that's really kind of been our core, is that, I was just on a call today with a firm and I think they were so predisposed that they had to have a client of a certain size before they called us. Well, that's never been our approach. Our approach has been help a CPA address a situation, whether that be a question of how a particular piece of tax law intersects with their client's business, or maybe a myth associated with a piece of tax legislation. So with Let's Talk Tax, our goal is just a different way to deliver that message to a new genre of people, whether that's more CPAs, obviously other referral sources like real estate, people in commercial real estate, or clients themselves. We just feel this is a great extension of what we've already been doing.
So, as you mentioned, there's lots of resources out there in the tax industry. So what's going to set Let's Talk Tax apart from some of those other resources?
Sure. I think one of the things that we do well, and we're not a perfect firm. There is no perfect firm. But one of the things that we do well is we take tax law and make it we relate it to a client's situation. Okay, is that we understand we're in this every day. I think one of the mistakes a lot of providers make is they've set a very low bar for entry for companies to take certain tax planning tools that creates exposure for them, or they speak at such a high level that businesses don't understand why this is important to them. And I think that's something that we are is the focus of every time we have the opportunity to introduce McGuire Sponsel or a tax plan to a new client through one of our alliance partners. We want to make sure we explain the theory, but we focus on the application and make it relatable to them. So at the end of the call or the meeting, they understand, okay, here's how I qualify, here's what the benefit is, and here's what's required of me to fulfill or implement this strategy.
So as you're breaking down these complex issues, are there any misconceptions that you plan to address throughout the season of Let's Talk Tax?
Sure. I mean, I hope, in a way, I wish there weren't misperceptions, because that means everybody has a clear understanding. But tax is extremely complicated and it's not being any easier. I think you have that. Plus, you have other market forces constantly, as I said a moment ago, constantly pushing the bar down to sell more. And I think that now those aren't traditionally CPA firms; those are more ancillary firms that position themselves right on the outskirts of the CPA industry. But our goal is to really deal with these things head on. Obviously, we're coming out of a period or a season where employee retention credits were big. There was a ton of marketing pressure on ERTC that obviously the IRS had to push back on quite hard. Historically, you look at R&D credits for certain industries, and 179D years ago when it first came out. So we're going to deal with things head on. We're going to explain how tax law is to be interpreted what the IRS is seeing or certain states, as well as where it makes sense for companies. And, Meg, sometimes a company may qualify for something, but it doesn't make sense to pursue. Okay, is that you look at the R&D credit, for example. The R&D credit is a very lucrative credit. Well, but if you only spend $40,000 in development in 1 year and you have a 6 to 8% tax credit, well, how much energy are you going to want to expend in chasing something that may only generate you $2,500 of credit? There's opportunity costs, there's engagement fees, and things like that. We also, when we're sitting there explaining tax law, we also got to make it so relatable to the taxpayer they understand.
So that's what listeners can expect, right? Breaking down these real world cases.
Sure.
So no matter if you're from the tax industry, real estate industry, you'll be able to tune in on legislative updates, any other changes or trends in the industry, and get a firm understanding of what's going on.
But it's going to extend just beyond federal. I think federal, so much of what people focus on is the federal level, but there is a ton of things that happen at the state and local levels that when we have the opportunity, we're going to bring that in as well. Obviously our state location advisory practices has a very state and local slant because those are state and local incentives. Our property tax is all state and local. So we'll have that state and local, but I really, my goal for this, our vision for this as a firm is we want to bring in experts from across the country and be able to speak to different things that business owners are facing, the burdens that they face from a tax standpoint, the challenges CPAs face. And I mean, frankly, right now, the CPA industry is really stretched. There's a very low pipeline of talent coming into the industry. It's harder and harder to keep people in the industry. And so we want to talk about that as well. So is that the goal, is to be a best practice shop or platform? But no, but I think we understand our audience and we understand our presence in the CPA industry. And we're going to try to address the needs and the questions that our core audiences have.
So from your perspective, what are you most excited to talk about this year on Let's Talk Tax?
I think 174 is the big hot topic right now. That is, for something that was passed in 2017 as part of TCJA and was never intended to be enacted, it has been a thorn in the side of the CP industries and extremely punitive to business owners, especially closely held businesses. We have a lot of hope that'll get fixed. I mean, that is the biggest pressing issue. I mean, when you have people paying tax on the dollars they're investing in R&D, it's contrary to everything that we stand for as a country to inspire innovation.
Well, listeners have a lot to look forward to this year. We've got a lot on the schedule. Can you share something more on a personal note? Let the listeners get to know you.
Sure.
Maybe tell us what your favorite inspiration or mantra, something that you tell yourself gets you through the day.
I wish I could say I created it because I didn't, is that I worked my way in a car dealership through high school and college. And I was driving the courtesy shuttle one day, and a business owner, I was driving him from the dealership when we were dropped off his car for service to his office. And he was asking, we were talking, making small talk during that little 15-minute drive. And I told him how I was studying accounting and, wanted to go in the CP industry and maybe be an entrepreneur one day. And he said, listen, I'm going to share some advice that I was given. Treat your smallest client like your largest client. Treat your largest client like your only client, and you'll never want for a client. And Meg, I think of that probably, I don't want to say daily, but I think of that weekly here at McGuire Sponsel. I'm very proud that that's instilled in the fabric of our way of doing business here.
Well, thank you for sharing that. Thanks for giving us a chance to get to know you a little bit more and see what we can expect from Let's Talk Tax this year.
Thanks, Meg.